Very good morning to everyone, and on the first day you're welcome to Agra, city of Taj and the city of everlasting love, that's as they call it. So thanks Kumar and for inviting me to this popular course. I've been part of this course before, and I think Kumar is doing a great job presenting this course also in all the international conferences. And I've been lucky to be part of some of his courses. I have no financial interest in any of these presentations, and I wanted to start with this small video clip of Kumar wanted me to show some of the challenging things, and this patient, we had an intumescent cataract. We were anticipating some kind of upthrust. The chamber was very, very shallow. I used the soft shell technique, and with the, here I realized that my rhexis was in danger of running away. I decided, I have devised few strategies to take care of these, but here I thought first I'll just form the chamber once again and injected sodium hyaluronate, but it didn't work. Went into the typical flag sign. Now, okay, there's no video here. I think there's something wrong. Can I just pause this for a moment? Okay.
Shadow aa rahi.
Here the video is gone. So, I mean, it's visible, but it's like a shadow or something. So, I'll just continue because for lack of time till they fix this, I think the screen is showing. So, typically these cataracts which have the intumescent cataracts with the flag sign will usually be soft cataracts because they're intumescent. They're sometimes in younger patients, also in pediatric cataracts. It's rare to find a very, very hard cataract as in this patient with the flag sign, which makes your job tough because if you have a soft cataract, it's fairly easy to just fragment the nucleus and get it out. Here I found that I had to do the chopping maneuvers. There was a thought of shifting to either SICS or to extracapsular, which may have been the wiser choice here. I'm more comfortable doing phaco. I thought if the cataract is not very hard, I'm going to be able to do a phaco chop in the iris plane. For that, I had to come out of the capsular bag. As you noticed, I was able to prolapse the nucleus using my phaco probe itself. Once I complete these chops, you'll notice here that I was somehow able to get this hard cataract out. The trick was never to let the chamber lose its, always have a formed chamber, never to leave off the infusion or to inject viscoelastic from the side port if you have to switch off the infusion. As you'll see, this was a risk taken and probably not a great risk to take. However, we got away with that. Now, what I wanted to show you was how things can change suddenly when you just think that you've got away with it, and as in this case, just watch how it happens. And as you'll see that I've completely removed the nucleus. Now is the time when I think that I can take it easy and go with irrigation aspiration. Now the moment I come out, I forget the basic dictum which I had been following through the surgery to keep my chamber formed. And you can see that the moment my phaco probe came out here, I immediately had that break in the rhexis extending to the posterior capsule, which hadn't happened all through the case because my infusion was constantly on. So as soon as the chamber shallowed, you can see that the rhexis cut, the flag sign extended onto the posterior capsule. Now, luckily, we were able to manage this. I managed to get the cortex out, and at that point we decided not to put in. There was a suitable lens was not available for this situation, and the patient was a little uncooperative, and we decided to come back later for secondary IL fixation. I think that part of the video is in this video as well. Here we did just to finish that case, we did a PI with the cutter, which is what I enjoy doing. You can see you can put it on single cut mode, gives you an excellent PI. You can go in from the side port or one of the other ports, gives you a beautiful PI. Now we came back to this patient about a month later. You can see that we had planned to go with one of the secondary fixation techniques, had suitable IOLs kept ready for that. And to our surprise, we found that in 1 month the fibrosis was so nice that we were left with only this sized rent, which had previously occupied almost a huge size, not allowing us to put in the lens. So with this in place and no vitreous in the chamber, the whole situation had changed. We had a nice PC now to work with, and we decided at this time to go ahead with fixation of a IOL in the sulcus itself rather than go for a scleral fixated or a glued or a retrofixated iris claw as I would have done otherwise. Now you'll notice that I'm putting a single piece hydrophilic acrylic lens, which is totally against the teaching which tells you to avoid putting in single-piece acrylic lenses. The data has been phenomenal, but if you'll read up more carefully, all the data presented is from hydrophobic acrylic lenses, single-piece lenses, which showed all those complications which were seen with sulcus fixation. We have been into publication now with a study of our own of about 300 IOLs in the sulcus with the hydrophilic design and with comparative data, which should be out soon. And our results have shown very similar results and almost similar complication rates as with multi-piece lenses and single-piece hydrophilic acrylic lenses of a particular design. So that's beyond the scope of this talk, but this is how we manage this case. And since I have time for one more, I'll quickly go to this one, which is an old video, but it's a favorite. When in these situations, it has a lot of learning to it. And this patient, we actually had we started off with the surgery in a routine way. It had a semi-dilated pupil. It wouldn't dilate all the way, but finding it difficult to chop this very sticky cataract, we realized that the pupil was coming down. There was a floppy iris. So we decided to go in with a Malugins ring. And I have been using Malugins ring for quite some time. You'll notice that we got the Malugins ring in place, but as I realized, and it's probably not visible on this video because of the clarity issues, the Malugins ring had caught the rhexis over here because the rhexis had already been made before we put in the Malugins ring, and the visualization was not great. So when we put in the ring, apparently it just caught the edge of the rhexis, and we realized that it was pulling on the rhexis edge, which can be a disaster. It can lead to a break in the rhexis. So here we are going to try and put the ring and then go back. So as you'll notice here, I'm now disengaging the ring from the pupil edge and from the rhexis, and then once it is, so the lesson learned here is to be very careful. Either you put in a Malugins ring before you do the rhexis. If you have to do it halfway, it may be a better idea to put in the iris hooks, or if you're putting in a ring, be careful that you don't catch the rhexis. It's very easy to catch the rhexis also along with that and have a rhexis break, which can compound your problems. Now once we had this thing in place, you'll realize that job becomes very easy. With the Malugins ring in place, I think surgery becomes a breeze, and I thought I was now very comfortable. As you can see, I can quickly finish off the cataract, and once I'm done with the cortex, now I'll pause it again over here. You'll see this. For some reason, I'm not able to pause it. Wait. Oh God. Okay. Now we were able to get in this lens. And you'll see this is a Zeiss design, and you can see the haptic design. This was the original Zeiss lens which came out about 5 years back. Now you can see that this haptic is going into the bag, and the rest of the lens is opening up. Obviously it's a hydrophilic lens. It opens up above the rhexis and above the Malugins ring as well. So typically what would you do? You would just press on the haptics and it would just slide into the bag. That's what you would do to put these lenses into bag, and you can see that I'm trying to do that itself. My one haptic is in. I'm just trying to see that I'll just have to nudge the other haptic. It didn't go very easily, so I decided I'll just have to help it a little bit. I pull on the haptic, try to guide it in. I'm thinking using a bimanual technique. You can see it usually works. If you have a small rhexis, it usually works like this. You can just slide it into the bag, and then the third one would obviously go in with a little bit of depression. I thought I got the second one in, but somehow it wasn't going in all the way, as you can realize here. Everything was good. The bag was intact. The rhexis was intact. It should go. I mean, there was no reason why it shouldn't go, but for some reason, something which should take only 10 seconds was not happening. I'm trying to put in the third haptic through the ring. And probably what I didn't calculate on was, as you'll notice here, the Malugins ring is giving a pupil aperture which is smaller than the size of the optic of the lens. And for that reason, this optic is not going to go in through that Malugins ring aperture which was there. So what I should have done in the first place was to have injected this lens, not using a wound-assisted injection. I should have gone in with the nozzle of my injector right at the mouth of the capsular rhexis and injected this lens under the Malugins ring. That would have avoided all this. This is all in retrospect, and this was a lesson learned. So we kept trying this, and as you can understand, this IOL is bigger than what the Malugins ring is giving us space. So again, I'm sorry, for some reason it just, when I pause it, it doesn't come back. So this game went on for some time. I'll bring you to the end of this whole sad situation for the patient and me. As we kept trying several tricks, the Malugins ring got dislodged from the pupil edge in the process. I thought maybe I should just pull out the original haptic from the bag and try to position it in the sulcus. and put this lens in the sulcus and then find a way to put it into the bag once it goes in. Now all these efforts did not work, as I later on realized that because my lens size was a little bigger than the Malugin's ring. Finally, we dislodged the ring and we realized that we had produced a zonular dehiscence in trying to play around with all these things. Shouldn't have gone on. I should have probably just explanted the lens, increased the incision size and put in a new lens, but that's all in retrospect and lessons learned. So here we now decide that enough is enough. We have to pull out this lens. The ring is likely to go into the vitreous if I am not careful. There is a small dehiscence at 12 o'clock over here, at the just below the wound. I get the ring out. And we decide that in this patient, the best thing, this patient was very uncooperative. This lady is still with me after 5 years, and a very nice lady, but she was very uncooperative by now. And we decided to go in just with an ACIOL, which when done properly does give good results. If I have 2 more minutes left, I'll quickly show you a short video clip, which is again, this is an ICL, which you can see that the vault is very, very low. Kumar, I can finish it off in 2 minutes, right? Okay. So you can see this ICL vault, very low vault. This was on the first day post-op. Likely to go on. I have had 1 or 2 patients in few years go on to develop a cataract, so I'm very, very careful with this now. If you'll see on the OCT, this is the fellow eye of this patient, in which we had changed the size after the first eye. We managed to get a very good vault in second eye. In the first eye, as you'll see, the vault is less than 100 microns here on the OCT. I think the OCT is a great tool to anterior segment OCT, gives you excellent images for these ICLs. So we decided on an ICL exchange. It's nothing as dramatic or traumatic as my previous video, but just gives you a few tips on how to successfully do an ICL exchange. The trick is that when you have to do a cataract in an ICL patient, it's very easy because you're going to sacrifice the crystalline lens in any case. When you do an ICL exchange, you have to ensure that the crystalline lens is not touched or traumatized in any way, because it'll go on to develop a cataract if you end up damaging it. So getting the ICL out is very easy. You have to then rotate it, put enough viscoelastic, make sure that your ICL is well above the crystalline lens. And then you can go in with these ICL holding forceps between the 2 haptics, get a good grasp on the lens as you would load it, and these are the same forceps which are used for ICL loading also. Then you have to be very, very gradual. The incision size can be about 3.5 millimeters, and as you just nudge on it, you'll see that it just folds up and comes out. Now here I'll again pause this. I've removed the ICL successfully. As I'm going in with the second ICL, you'll see that I have a nicely dilated pupil, but just see what happens as I start injecting it. As I'm going in and it's halfway through, for some reason, maybe because of the shallowing of the AC, the pupil has now become really small. So at this point, I realize that if I inject my ICL in the usual place above the iris plane and then later on position it, it'll make life very tough for me. So I have a change in plan immediately, and I just decide to slow down here and just try to see if I can inject it below that, because otherwise with a small pupil and a big ICL above it, it would require a lot of manipulation. So at this point I then managed to get in the haptics under the thing. This was a change of plan through the surgery, so you have to be alert all the time to see what happens, and I managed to get it in. And with this, I think I'll just finish this video. It's usual after this, and I'll stop here. In case there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Gaurav.